About 3.5 years ago, I wrote my first poem. I wrote it on the day that I almost killed myself. But ever since then, I spent just about every day, all the time writing. And I've written hundreds of poems over those years. Just for the sake to help me make it through each day. I never intended, when I was writing them, or never sharing with anyone. They were simply just for myself. Just to help me make sense of myself, what was going on up in my head and in my life. Anytime I was struggling with something or experienced something, I wrote. Writing became my way of healing. And I can assure you now that even though, yes, I do have so many things I still struggle with, still far from being in a perfect place overall and with myself. Through writing, through this poetry, I've gotten to a much better place. Relationship with myself and others, and a lot more hopeful. So, after a few years of writing, I decided that I was ready to start sharing it with others, with the world. So, I took the first about year and a half of writing I did, 2020 and 2021. Everything I wrote those 2 years. And put it together in a book. This book. Maybe someday, maybe someday. And I'll just read you what I have written here on the back. We're all broken, and we're just arranging the pieces. Written between the ages of 17 and 18, maybe someday, is Jada Blocker's attempt to begin arranging his brokenness. Each poem in this collection is a piece of him and was a lifeline for him through some of his darkest years. He hopes as you read it that you may find pieces of yourself in his words and come out of it feeling more complete than before. And maybe someday, you will realize you were whole all along. It's a scary thing, sharing something so personal, something so raw in me, just out to the world and to everyone else. Yeah, I said I wrote these a few years ago, but only just published it April of 2024. And yeah, it was a scary thing to publish it, but think it's important for me to put this out there for myself, for my own accountability, for my own strength, for my own hope, for my own future. That I put this out there and share even the darkest parts of myself so I can continue to work on them and become a better version of myself. And as I said, I hope that you can find things that you resonate with it within the book, within my words, and that maybe that can help you arrange some of your brokenness. It's a nice day. I felt like getting outside, so here we are. Thought I'd finish off by sharing the introduction to my book with you. And I plan to over time go through each poem within this book with you, if you'd like. Share it with you and give a little bit of the story and stuff behind each one. So, my book starts off with a little poem that I wrote that first year that just really means a lot to me and has kind of become like my motto, like the heart of who I am as a writer. And is why I decided on my my artist name of Arranging the Pieces. And this poem is called Arranging the Pieces. Let your heart be open, even if no one receives it. Say what you mean, even if no one believes it. Live your life like you don't need a reason, because we're all broken, and we're just arranging the pieces. Then next, I have the preface section where I detail a bit of the story of the day that I wrote my first poem called Arrange. That day I almost killed myself. And a little bit of the story and a little bit about the book as a whole. I started writing this book on the day I almost killed myself, July 21st, 2020. However, I did not yet know it at the time. It was about 10:45 p.m., and I was in my bed, crying, wrapping the sheets around my head and neck, listening to Odyssey by Talos, trying to cut off my airflow and suffocate myself to death. That was plan A. And if that didn't work, plan B was to run out into the interstate just down the street, 17 years old, unloosen the sky and suffer the sight. Then you walked out in raging water. As my sheets became flooded with my tears, my breath became harder to find. I felt my head getting numb and my consciousness looking for an escape. Our temples are hearts, and then heaven heavy the final force, and I was downed in dying water. All of a sudden, a flash of red forcefully illuminated my mind, and I thought, maybe this is it. This is the door to my death. But instead, I sensed my arms frantically pulling at the sheets around my head, tangling through the knots, until I saw the faint light in my bedroom and desperately reached for my phone, which lay on the floor beside my bed, though not quite knowing why I needed it like my life depended on it. I wake to your likeness, but how come you're here? I wasn't found in delight. It's the call before it's far from over. I paused Odyssey and opened my Google Docs app, and before I knew it, I had written something. Something I called arrange. It's a weird feeling, the feeling of being alive when you thought you wouldn't be. The tears kept falling. I was still more depressed than ever. I still hated myself. I still wanted my life to be over. But I was alive. Now I'm wading water. Then I'm cast out in the cold. Heave that light up over you. Fading right. Just once, you know. Looking back, I now realize that flash of red was not the door to my death. It was the door to hope. And in that moment, I took my first step toward it. The next morning, I woke up with a new sense of light. A speck of stardust in a universe of darkness, but a light nonetheless. And from that day on, I wrote. These words became my therapist, my coping mechanism, my escape, my best friend, my hope. This was the beginning of maybe someday, maybe someday. I spent the next year and a half writing words. I wrote these purely just to help myself make it through each day, without the intention of ever sharing them, let alone publishing them. But here I am. 17 and 18 were two of my darkest years, so most of the poems in here are not pretty, elegant, and happy. They are the truth, my truth. But that doesn't mean they are without hope or without a positive message, because I found some sense of hope through these words, and I want to make a positive impact on others with them. We are all broken, and we're just arranging the pieces. Writing this poetry was my attempt to begin arranging my brokenness. Each poem in this collection is a piece of me, and I hope that as you read it, you may find pieces of yourself in my words, and come out of it feeling more complete than before. And maybe someday, you will realize you were whole all along. In this odyssey, it's hard to leave. I hold at the breach. I've got my reasons. Writing this book and getting to share it with the world has really meant so much to me, and has brought me so many great memories and opportunities, and so much that I'm glad I haven't missed out on if that day had gone differently. So I hope that you'll stick with me, both in this life and along the journey through this book, and you find your reasons to stay. And that if you haven't already, you find something to guide you through the dark parts of your life. Some moon to be a reflection of the sun as you wander the night. And I hope that if anything I shared here resonated with you, that you will join me on this journey through this book. And if you really want to, you can find this book online. You can find me on Instagram. Find this book on many stores online, whether Amazon, Barnes & Noble, or many other things. And we can arrange our brokenness together.